This is Track Talk. We're going to be doing another game of 1846. I wanted to do this game in particular because it features the $40 IC start, and we've featured that at least once on the channel before, but I don't think I really did the strategy justice in terms of analyzing and talking about it. So now that we have a good game featuring it, I'd like to dive into it in a little more detail. Manito will be leading us off in the private auction or private draft and has several good privates to pick from, as you usually do in the first round. Chicago and Western, Big Four, Lakeshore Line, and Mail. We'll see what he ends up picking. He's going to be going last in order of starting companies, so may look towards a teleport, either Chicago Western or Big Four, as he's not necessarily going to get his first choice of company. Matt Fedor is up. He has Ohio and Indiana, Michigan Southern still available, Meatpacking, and Boomtown. John Flagg, Chicago and Western, Mail, and Lakeshore. So some of the teleports appear to have been taken. Commodore rounding us out, Ohio and Indiana, Boomtown, Michigan Southern, and a bunch of passes. Manito, so he took the Big Four teleport, kind of as we alluded to. And at this point has 3 passes, Mail, Ohio and Indiana, and Lakeshore Line. May want to just pick up a pass here. Mad Fedor, Meatpacking, has Michigan Southern, Lakeshore, Ohio, and Indiana. And he's already spent 60, so could pick up one of the $40 privates. Don't imagine he's going to be eager to pick up Michigan Southern. John Flagg, Chicago and Western, and he has a bunch of passes as well. He has the teleport, so he's pretty flexible. He also is going to have second choice of companies. So I think he can pick anything he wants here, basically. Commodore, he picked up Boomtown and has Lakeshore Line, Mail, and Michigan Southern. May also want to just pick up a pass. Looks like Manito picked up a pass and has spent only $40 in the, or sorry, he spent $100 in the auction because he picked up the minor. So still has cash to play with, but doesn't want the Michigan Southern. So if he were to pick something up, probably Lakeshore Line. Mad Fedor picked up 2 privates already and probably will be passing here. John Flagg, don't imagine he wants Mail, probably picking up the Michigan and Southern. This leaves Commodore with the Mail contract, who could pick it up and could also just try and give it away another player. If nobody picks it up, he'll get it for much cheaper than it is now, so kind of win-win. And it looks like, who ended up with it? Mad Fedor. So that leaves Commodore with $360, most cash in the game, and priority. As we discussed, he's going to be doing the $40 par of the IC. And since I knew I was going to be doing this video, I've been thinking about this strategy a little bit. And one of the big questions that I have about this strategy is it possible to do this with another presidency? The advantage of the IC is twofold. You have the bonus treasury, and then you have those reserved tile lays where you don't eat into your treasury in order to lay track. So with the IC, you can par for 40 and get $280 into your treasury. 3 2 trains is $260. That leaves you $40 left over to buy in a private, which is potentially, great. You have left your treasury in your true company, your second company, totally untouched, been able to buy in your private, have 3 trains, and have denied the IC to another player. Now compare that to trying to run this strategy with another company. Now you have $240. You don't have that extra bonus, and you have no free track. So you can buy your trains, but you can't lay any track. Whether or not that track ends up being useful is a little bit unclear to me. You're laying the track so early in the game, anybody could potentially take advantage of it throughout the game. So I don't know that that's a huge difference, but maybe the deal breaker here is that you're just denying the IC to another player. So we'll see how the other players want to play around this. John Flagg, he is buying the GT, synergizes well with the Michigan Southern, and also with the Chicago and Western has gotten his company another token, which can be pretty important for the GT with its limited tokens. Mad Fedor now up, and he's starting the PRR. PRR has the teleport, so even though the NYC is still in theory able to be parred and could in theory be parred higher than him, he's not worried about getting blocked out at Cleveland. Benito does in fact par the NYC, and he pars it under the PRR, so at least the PRR will be operating first from Matt Fedor's perspective. Count von Blucher are going to be buying additional shares of the IC, and Matt Fedor bought one more share. NYC now also being invested. So Matt Fedor is fully capitalizing the IC and now sells out of it, leaving himself $280 to par his second company. The other thing about this strategy that's a little bit interesting, I'm sure skilled 1846 players already know this, but I'll point it out to newbies like me. You may be wondering why this is safe to do. Like, why can't you just buy the IC away from the president? And the answer is because the president is going to then sell out of the IC, and when he does, he drops it back to 20. So then you're running the IC, it falls back because there's shares in the market, and then it falls back after it buys its trains into closure. So now you've bought all these trains and the company closes immediately. You're not able to buy those trains over into your other company. So even if these players had left themselves capital to discourage Commodore from selling out of the IC, it actually wouldn't have, given them any benefit, and they would potentially be losing the $80 of revenue instead of Commodore. So Commodore, he, as noted, has kind of surrendered priority by parring the IC, which is going to be eventually closed, and now has his choice of the B&O and the C&O. With the Boomtown, may want the B&O. We'll see if he agrees with that. He does, and now has one more share to buy. So just in summary of this $40 strategy at the end of the stock round, Commodore has denied the other players a good company. He has secured 3 2 trains for himself because he's going to be operating first. And 2 trains generally pretty good. So the other players are going to be forced to buy the more expensive 4s or 3 and 5s. And he's also going to be able to buy in his private without touching his treasury in the B&O. The downsides are that he has lost himself priority into the next stock round because he had to take so many more stock actions than the other players. And then he also lost the ability to choose first which company he wanted to start. The other players left him the left him the B&O, which has some decent synergy with Boomtown, but there's no guarantee that that works out for him. And then the final downside is that he starts the game with 400, but he's going to be causing $80 of that, so 1/5 of his net worth to just basically evaporate by taking this strategy. We'll continue with the rest of the game. John Flagg operating the Michigan Southern in synergy with the GT. Looks like he's heading down into Toledo. Big 4, this is the NYC player, and he is heading up to Chicago by means of Terre Haute. We see the first major company operating, of course, the IC. We've talked about this a lot already. And he's going to take advantage of the reserved track, so lays 2 tracks without having to pay for them, and now we'll be buying his 3 2 trains. Taking advantage of that. We talked a little bit about potentially buying in your private, and one thing that just occurred to me is that the Boomtown in particular is a unfortunate private to have bought in with the IC if he were to do that, because it only applies to the company that owns it. So he can't buy it in with the IC and then hope to use it with the B&O. A little bit unfortunate. PRR is up, and he's issuing shares. Immediately teleports over to Fort Wayne, and is going to be heading into Chicago that way. The 2 trains are getting a little bit limited. We'll see if he wants to pick up 2 here. He does, and we'll hold there. So it looks like the the GT will be ending up with no 2 trains other than the one in the M&S. NYC, we'll see if he wants to run into Cleveland. Has been denied a bunch of 2 trains, so going to be more expensive than usual to run a bunch of trains out of Cleveland. Issuing shares, and looks like he is setting up for the Cleveland run out of Erie, but he also has bought in his private, so we'll have runs into Indianapolis and Terre Haute as well. A little bit surprised he buys in the Big Four early here, denying himself some early track points in the game by buying in his private this early. He has bought a 2-train, and maybe that's why we see him buying the private, because he wants the train in the NYC as opposed to the Big Four for his next operation. Buying the 4, and we will see the first operation of the B&O. So B&O has some options, could teleport to Cincinnati, could also just upgrade Wheeling and try to run a bunch of trains into these offboards that once he buys the trains out of the IC. We'll see what he does. Issuing shares. Does look like he gets into Cincinnati and will be cooperating with the Indianapolis player, and will shortly be buying in his 2 trains from the IC. So should have no trouble running all of his 2 trains in the next operating round. Could even buy 4 here if he wanted, and then run 4 trains. I think that would require him to drop a token in Indianapolis to take advantage of that. So he does buy one of the next rank of trains and is now just buying all of his trains out of the IC. I'm just looking to see if he bought the Boomtown. He's sitting on it, so still has the option of buying that into the IC. But if he's going to be running a bunch of trains out of Cincinnati, maybe he wants to use it with the B&O. $20 a run. It's not going to take him too many runs to make up the hit to his treasury by buying it into the B&O. GT, he is issuing shares and immediately buys in the Michigan Southern. So both of the minor companies have been bought in during 1.1. Neither player is valuing the track points, so to speak. And also upgrading Toledo, so has pretty nice runs for himself. Unfortunately, he has basically missed out on the 2 trains with the exception of the Michigan Southern train, so not going to be able to just run a bunch of cheap trains along all these track routes that he's developed, and we'll have to pick up a more expensive train. Buying the 3-5, and we are into operating 1.2. So GT able to operate twice in a row, and upgrading in order to link up with his Chicago and Western token, which he is, I believe he's the president of that, yes. So he's not going to be teleporting, he'll just kind of link up the traditional way. Running 2 trains, and he's running for 160, not enough for a double jump, full paying it. Now buying in his private and securing the token. B&O, 4 trains in this company, and we'll see how he wants to take advantage of them. Currently only has routes for 2 of them. So linking up with Indianapolis, upgrading, probably dropping a token. He does, and now has routes for 3 of his trains. Sorry, all 4. He can run 2 trains out of Indianapolis. So very nice. And he is assigning Boomtown, so not going to be buying that in with the IC. Paying out 280, enough for a double jump. And PRR, linking up, getting into Chicago, and also upgrading it. Probably will drop a token there since he wasted a track point to upgrade the city. Not wasted, but used the track point. If he wasn't going to upgrade Chicago, could just run into Toledo to run his 2 trains. So double tapping Chicago and assigning meat. Half paying, which is not going to be enough for a double jump, and buys in his privates. Looks like he is taking advantage of the Ohio and Indiana as well, and going to be linking up with Cleveland through Fort Wayne. NYC, 3 trains. Doesn't really need to lay track into Cleveland at this point. Could instead lay track into Cincinnati and then run trains from there into the offboard. So he secures a run into Chicago, should grab that token before the B&O does. And does. And will now be running his 3 trains. Pretty good revenue for him. Going to be enough to double jump. The IC now. This is kind of what I was talking about in terms of floating the IC versus another company. So he's got these $43. This is the benefit of starting the IC. What does he choose to do with them? And I'm curious about this. So he will be using this to lay track. And where was the second track that he laid? I3. I3 is to St. Louis. So basically just building track for the B&O to take advantage of. And some nice synergy. It ends up being with the teleport into Cincinnati token in Indianapolis. He's able to take advantage of this track pretty early. So it makes sense. Um, Very efficient use of the funds in the company. I don't know. I'm curious to think what other people have to say. Is this a viable strategy at all with a company that's not the ick? Um, I'd love to hear from better players about that. Regardless, going into the next stock round, GT or John Flagg running the GT, $200. He is second to most cash entering the stock round, and he will be buying his own GT from the market. Mad Fedor, he's buying PRR from the market, so everybody just trying to clear their issued shares from the market. Manito, he is bucking the trend and buys the B&O from the Treasury, so attacking that company, trying to prevent Commodore from running away from the game with 4 trains. Commodore buying the GT from the Treasury as well. Another attack. John Flagg buying the B&O. So players are, I guess, recognizing that the B&O is a force to be reckoned with and hoping to prevent it from getting much capital later in the game. Downside is that they're giving the B&O a bunch of cash, so he's going to be able to redeem market shares and rebuild his treasury. Mad Fedor buying the PRR off the market, sticking to his guns. Manito, one more share for him probably, and he buys the NYC. Commodore out of shares, out of cash for shares, could sell the GT, increase the likelihood that it falls back, make it a little bit harder to clear the treasury or clear the market, and then look to invest in his own company. B&O's revenue is probably going to be quite a bit higher than the GT, so we may very well see that. And he does. John Flagg probably going to be returning the favor. Could sell the. Well, actually, I should take that back. B&O not going to be able to clear the market on his own, so really not needing to sell the B&O to fill that fill the market up, and then also not going to be able to clear his own GT market by selling the share, so may just want to sit on the higher revenue B&O share. But he sells and buys a PRR. Mad Fedor, he has nearly a cleared market, so he might just buy his own PRR. He's bought 2 of those shares already. He does. No guarantee that John Flagg lets him get away with this, of course. Manito, he's passing. Commodore, passing. John Flagg, he puts the share back into the market. Bad news for Mad Fedor. And what is he looking to invest in here? Could buy his own GT, but it looks like it's going to run worse than the NYC, so may want to buy a treasury share there, which he does. And everyone is passing now. John Flagg has first operation, but lost priority in the stock round as a result of taking, the time to trash other people's shares into the market. John Flagg with the GT, where is he looking to head? Could link up with Cleveland, just secure a token there, potentially get 2 east-west runs for later in the game. Otherwise, may want to head over to Chicago and doesn't yet have an east-west run, but next operating round would. So may see him do that. Redeeming share, and looks like he is taking the opportunity to head over to Chicago. We'll have to upgrade Detroit, I believe, in order to get an east-west run. So paying for 170, pretty poor revenue, and full pays it. Just want to look at the game state in terms of where we are in the train roster. 2 of these second phase trains left. Is anybody in a position to push into the 3rd rank of trains? Not really. B&O train locked. GT could issue a bunch of shares, but is limited because nobody has capitalized or nobody has invested in his company and how many shares he can invest or issue to push trains, and he wouldn't be able to buy it on his own. NYC, lower market value, so issuing shares for him also going to be a little bit limited. And the PRR could issue shares, but I think it's going to take all 3 companies to push trains, unless somebody wants to full withhold to really accelerate things. B&O, don't imagine he'll be full withholding, has a very healthy treasury and treasury in terms of cash, not in terms of shares, and can just pay and then redeem his shares. So he immediately redeems, upgrades Cincinnati, and with Boomtown, I imagine he's going to be laying track to run more trains out of Cincinnati. Just get that extra 20 bucks. He does, so probably running 3 trains out of Cincinnati here. And the 4th train is running from Indy down into St. Louis. So he's got very nice revenue, 420. Would be enough to triple jump, but he's in the restricted zone of the market. Regardless, 4 shares in the treasury, he's going to be sitting very pretty after this payout. So he full pays, and just curious, his treasury is back up to 257. So he started with 400, and he's halfway back to where he was. NYC, this player may want to just link up into Dayton, and then he'll have his east-west run secured for the rest of the game, basically. I don't know where else he would head. Let's see. So upgrading out of Terre Haute and getting into Toledo, Detroit from the south. Does he want to drop a token here? He does in Toledo, okay. Doesn't want to drop in the Z cities because they will open up to 3 holes later in the game. And getting himself 3 runs. Now with that token in Toledo, is able to run twice out of there. Running for 300, and that'll be enough for a double jump. Will not be quite enough for a double jump if he half pays, unfortunately. So he full pays. Again, several treasury shares. May look to redeem a share in the next operating round. He buys a 3-5, and we should have one of those left. We do. So nobody will be breaking into the 3rd rank of trains just yet. PRR, just 2 trains, kind of a precarious position. Mad Fedor has fully invested in his own company, so is very highly incentivized to make this work somehow, but maybe in for a rough time. Upgrading Fort Wayne, and then looking to head over into Cleveland soon. Running for just 210, and unfortunately he may need to withhold here because he's staring at the rusting event here. So he issues some shares, is going to secure himself a green train here, and full pays. But he does buy the green train. So we're looking at the first permanent trains, and we'll see who's able to pick those up. Commodore was able to leapfrog GT because Commodore double jumped, and I think the GT player was not able to. Yeah, he just single jumped. So now he's in a good position where his 2 trains are guaranteed to run, and everybody else is under the gun in terms of where this permanent train is going to break. GT, very healthy treasury with the issue and probably a full withhold. He's going to be able to bring that out, which would be pretty bad for everybody else besides Commodore. He is redeeming his last share and upgrading Cincinnati. So now he's going to have 4 runs out of Cincinnati. That Boomtown private's really paying off for him. And he's running for 480, $60 more than he did before. Very full treasury, so just going to full pay, I'm assuming, since half the revenue is coming to him by the treasury. Full pays and is able to double jump again, still in the restricted zone of the market. GT, is he going to be able to bring out a permanent train here? That will be really bad news for Manito and Mad Fedor if he does. He is, by he I mean John Flagg, he is invested in the NYC, so would potentially be obsoleting NYC's trains. But that said, does he care about that? Not really, because he's going to sell in the next stock round, so he'll get the run regardless. GT upgrading Detroit and has his east-west run. So with this revenue, probably going to be enough for him to withhold for the D train, or not the D, the permanent train. Running for 270, $100 increase in his revenue. Does he, well, actually, he didn't issue any shares, so we'll see. He full pays and does not buy the permanent train. NYC getting a little bit of a reprieve there. He is also train locked, so not going to be bringing out the perm. Getting a second run into Cleveland and just laying the single track. 4 trains for him, so running for 440, rivaling the B&O. Good for him. And he full pays. PRR, he is getting a run into Cleveland, should be able to get a little bit of a better revenue for himself, but not able to take advantage of the east-west. Where is he going to drop a token? Doesn't have cash for it just yet. Upgrading Erie, spending even more cash. And it's going to be very hard for him to redeem shares or token anywhere without some withholds now. So running for 370, pretty good revenue actually, now that he has 3 trains. Pays that out, and we are into the next stock round. So just looking at the game state, Fedor leading in shares, but the PRR is probably the weakest of these companies. He also has third most cash, Manito with the NYC. Decent revenue potential for this company with 2 of the second rank of trains, and he is operating, it looks like, third in operating order currently, so there's a chance that the 2 trains for him rust. Commodore Vanderwyn running the B&O, highest revenue company, also highest share value, and he is the cash leader, so already starting to take a lead in this game. He is a little bit behind the other 2 players in terms of shares, but I guess that doesn't matter if your shares are just so much better than theirs. John Flagg rounding us out, GT presidency, lowest revenue so far, and he may be the player that has to bring out the next rank of trains because everybody else is sitting on more 2 trains than he is. So if I am another player, I am probably not looking to put any money in the GT, anticipating some withholds. That said, if you buy the treasury shares, you're capitalizing the company. Maybe he doesn't have to withhold, and then it'll be a better investment. Matt Fedor, he's buying the NYC. Manito also buying the NYC. And they are buying from the treasury and from the market. President is buying his market share, of course. Commodore, he'll buy a GT, so maybe he's eager to get this train rush off and have the permanent trains come out. We'll see. John Flagg looking towards the B&O. I think the B&O is a pretty good bet. Going to be paying out pretty well and almost assuredly running before the permanent trains come out. Matt Fedor, he is continuing to invest in the NYC and buying more treasury shares. May see him just sell some of these shares to add some capital, start rusting the 2 trains, and then also fill the market. Benito buying the NYC. This company might sell out. Commodore, he is buying the GT off the treasury. John Flagg selling out of the NYC. Does he look to start buying B&O shares here? He is instead buying his own market share. Okay. Oh, sorry, he's buying a treasury share. That may be premature. I don't know that Commodore is going to just sit on these shares. He may be putting shares in the market for him. Matt Fedor buying the NYC, so clearing the market. Manito, he is buying the GT. Commodore, last share for him probably. And he buys another GT. Okay. John Flagg has sold the B&O, which will be falling back. If it falls back, it operates behind the GT and the NYC. Makes it more likely that the 2 trains will obsolete, but Commodore has options here in order to prevent this. Can put the GT in the market and protect his B&O. John Flagg buying the GT, and Manito selling the GT to buy the B&O treasury. Commodore, imagine he's going to sell at least 1 GT here, potentially more than that, and is actually happy to pass. Okay. So I guess as long as he sees the GT and the B&O falling back together, he's not worried about the NYC rusting things. NYC is train locked, so yeah, perfectly safe there. And he would have priority into the next stock round this way, so makes sense to not be selling the GT to protect the B&O. The only downside of that is that by falling back, he is remaining in the restricted zone. If he had been at 137 instead of falling back, he could have double jumped and then triple jumped potentially in his next operating round. Not sure his revenue would have been higher enough for that. At 480, probably not. NYC looking to link up with his token from the east, it looks like. And instead, just laying track. A little bit surprised we didn't see him lay towards Chicago. He already has a run into Chicago, but he would have an east-west run if he were to lay this track upgrade here. This track or this track. Running his 4 trains for 440, and he is full paying. B&O, potentially last run of the 2s before they obsolete. Soft rust, so he will guaranteed get more runs out of these 2s. He is, I guess, heading towards Fort Wayne. He secures a token there. Most of the map has been cut in half in terms of access to the west with tokens in Toledo, Fort Wayne, and Indianapolis. So maybe hoping to put that token into the B&O. He's redeeming a share and still has a very full treasury, so going to be full paying. GT, he is looking to bypass Fort Wayne, it looks like, and running the same route. Is he going to bring out a permanent here? He's got the money for it. And he half pays, could actually buy 2 permanents, which he does. So GT routes are, not GT routes, but GT trains are set. No room for any other permanent trains. And the PRR is the loser in terms of operating order here. The only player unable to run his 2s before they obsolete. Bad news for him. He does secure himself a run into Chicago, running 3 trains for 480. He may have to full withhold here. We were expecting him to do some withholding before, but now he really needs to get himself some permanent trains. He does full withhold and will secure one of the cheap perms. Good for him. And NYC was able to double jump last time, so able to stay ahead of the B&O and potentially get himself the last permanent or cheap permanent train as a result. So again, Commodore's decision to fall back instead of defend may end up coming to bite him. We'll see if this priority into the next stock round is worth it. NYC does lay the track that we expected last time, should be running east-west through that, and is able to link up with St. Louis as well. Not worried about the Fort Wayne token, apparently. Oh, sorry. I said that too early. He didn't need to lay the track because he's got this random token all the way over in Erie. That gives him access. Not random, of course. It's a starting token, but nice. So the map is cut in half functionally, and funnily enough, the NYC has ended up with 3 of the tokens doing that. Very strong map position for the NYC. Let's see if he can get the trains to go along with it. Running for a monstrous 620, and in order to pick up the permanent train is going to have half pay, which he does. Half pay, was that enough for a double jump? Yes, it was. Nice. And which train does he want, the 5 or the 4-6? Has relatively long east-west routes, so may want to pick up the 4-6. And we'll just buy the 5. Did he have the money for the 4-6? He did. Okay. B&O, obsolete 2 trains, so going to have good revenue, but lost out on the Fort Wayne token, which I think he wanted. And then also going to be needing to pick up a more expensive permanent train. With his treasury being so full, he may not even need to withhold for it. We'll see. Upgrades Cleveland, and going to drop a token in Erie. So has a secured east-west run, minus Dayton, but pretty low likelihood of him getting tokened out. Issuing a share, and is he going to full pay now? He half pays and has more than enough cash for the 7-8 if he wants it. He does. All the 2 trains rust, and this is just adding insult to injury for the players operating later in operating order. GT in the same boat as the PRR in the sense that they are only able to run their 2 trains once in this set of operating rounds. And also, these players have now obsoleted their second rank of trains, which is potentially even worse than losing out on the 2-run. GT, 2 permanent trains for him, and now just needs to make sure he gets good routes. 1 token left for him. Is he looking towards Cincinnati for that token? Upgrades Detroit. And running 3 trains for 540. Probably just wants to full pay at this point now that he has 2 permanent trains. So he does. Double jumps up to 150. Is anybody out of the restricted area yet? Both the B&O and the NYC are. PRR, obsolete train, and is upgrading Chicago. Running for 590, very nice revenue, but that's the last time that'll be happening. Does he half pay here to redeem shares? He full pays. And we're into the next stock round. The bank has almost $5,000 left in it, and we have plenty of these expensive permanent trains to come out. So don't imagine we'll be seeing any bank break here. Probably 2 more sets of operating rounds at a minimum. Potentially 3, but probably 2. Commodore with priority was costly for him, but he is now in a position to float the C&O if he wants. Does that make sense to do? C&O, easy access to Cincinnati, token space available in Cleveland, and with double tokens in Cincinnati, he would actually not have total control of that tile since it'll upgrade to 3 holes. What shares are available to him? Could buy his own B&O, and the revenue of the GT is pretty good. So maybe he just wants to buy his own B&O shares before everybody else snaps them up. Everybody has a bunch of cash, so the shares should be going off like hotcakes. He buys a GT instead. GT with 2 permanent trains. Okay, pretty safe investment. John Flagg, he is also buying the GT, so I misread that. Looks like everybody's prioritizing the GT over the B&O. And Commodore is guaranteed to get a B&O share still if he wants it. So definitely the right move to buy the GT first. Matt Fedor, he is buying the NYC. That company's now sold out as well. This company is running 1 permanent train and is going to have a hard time affording a second permanent train without withholds. So definitely a worse investment than the B&O in my mind. Manito, he is the player that will be starting the C&O. And this leaves John Flagg and, well, not John Flagg, Commodore, John Flagg, and Matt Fedor to buy up the rest of these B&O shares, I assume. Commodore is doing that. John Flagg, also. Matt Fedor, also. Does Manito backtrack at all for a B&O share? He may not, because he needs to make sure he capitalizes this C&O, which is going to have some very expensive trains to buy in just a moment. I don't know that he can afford to buy a B&O share. That means that Commodore is going to have max investment in the B&O and also, max investment in the GT for the non-president player. So he does buy the B&O, denies that to Commodore. And he's going to have a little bit of a rough time financing his permanent train as a result. Commodore, all the first power companies are sold out with the exception of the PRR. I don't imagine anybody's super excited to own the PRR. Single permanent train and kind of a lackluster map presence, unfortunately. But you got to put your cash somewhere, so Commodore buys a share. John Flagg also buying a share. And Matt Fedor actually is share locked. So in multiple ways, he's cert locked and also share locked in the PRR. So if he wants to do anything, he's going to have to sell a share. But I imagine he's happy to own the B&O and the NYC relative to the PRR. If anything, maybe he sells a PRR to invest in the C&O, which will have a better train at least. Just passing, makes sense. Manito buying a final share of the C&O. He does. Commodore, 1 more share for him. He's going to have to pick up PRR probably. He does. Everybody else looks like they're going to be in a position to pass. All right, so priority works out pretty well for Commodore there, able to pick up extra B&O shares as a result of being forced to fall back last stock round. NYC, 2 trains obsolete. Bad news for Manito and Matt Fedor, who invested quite heavily in this company. And I imagine that Manito is going to be forced to do some full withholds to buy a permanent train here. He's got good routes. Even with the C&O floating, he's not at risk of his east-west runs being cut. So 2 trains, 2 permanent trains have the potential to have really monstrous revenue for him. Upgrading Detroit and running his 3 trains for 750. He full withholds, and will be buying his second permanent train. So NYC going to have some really, really good runs, but was pretty costly to full withhold there. B&O, he is upgrading Erie and has just a single east-west run for himself. Missed out on the tokens in Chicago, and don't imagine we'll be seeing him pick one up. Running for, is it really only 540? Wow, I thought it would be higher than that. But with a half pay is able to secure his second permanent train. GT has had 2 permanent trains for a while and will continue to run these. He also only has a single east-west route, and he needs to start working them down south, I think. Otherwise, these tokens in Fort Wayne and Indianapolis are going to be pretty painful for him. Fortunately for him, he has the cash to upgrade Dayton and then get into Cincinnati. He has 1 token left, and I don't know that he has very exciting places to lay it. Basically just these Z cities left. He is not the C&O player, so he's not necessarily looking to cooperate with them in terms of tokens. Looks like he gets into Cincinnati and immediately tokens there. Doesn't block the C&O. Running down south now, and he had a revenue of 580, which he full paid. C&O first operation, can't immediately just get into Cincinnati and token there, may want to. That said, the only player with a token that could be problematic is the PRR, and they don't have cash to lay it, so not really in a huge rush. PRR is going to be not operating ahead of the C&O, so if C&O didn't want to lay a token here, he'd be totally safe not to. He is just laying the 1 track. It does lay the second track, just pausing to issue, immediately tokens it, and it's going to have to sell shares actually to afford a permanent train. Wasn't able to fully capitalize his company because he went back for that B&O share. That's painful, but the B&O share is going to be so valuable, it's probably worthwhile. Oh, sorry, he sells it. So actually, the share he went back for got him one payout and nothing more. That's painful for him. Regardless, buying a cheaper permanent train, and the PRR is up with a single permanent train. Upgrading Fort Wayne, running his train for 390, which he pays. GT still just the same 2 perms, and is actually managed to get ahead and is operating ahead of the B&O and the NYC. Those 2 players were initially in the lead, but have had to do some half pays and lost out on some double jumps as a result. GT should be double jumping once again, but I believe this will be his last double jump of the game. And potentially heading over to St. Louis. Going to take him a while to get there. Running for 590. B&O, let's see how monstrous his run gets. He is bypassing Dayton with that. And actually not running either east-west runs. That's interesting. Would it not be better for him to run into Indianapolis and down in St. Louis? I guess he doesn't have the track set up just yet to do that, and wants to hit Cincinnati twice. Okay. Running for just 600. That's not as good of a run as I was expecting, actually. I imagine he's going to have to optimize his track a little bit to get that east-west bonus. NYC should have pretty good runs, has an east-west bonus, and has a lot of the same track available to him that the B&O does. See what he's able to do. Upgrading Terre Haute and running for 760, so it does have better revenue. C&O, First run for him. Does he look to get into St. Louis? He has no cash for track, so couldn't lay anything there. I see. Full paying, PRR, last operation of this set. And maybe looking to bypass Toledo, get into Windsor and Detroit. Running a 4.6 for 390, which he has to half pay in order to get the money to upgrade this track down the road. Painful. So let's just stop and think about the game for a moment. 320 or 3,200 in the bank. Could well see the bank break in the next set with some pretty high revenues in three of the companies. The John Flagg player has not hit his cert limit and is going to be falling behind, I think, as a result of that. Mad Fedor, he's at his cert limit, has the PRR, which is not a great company, and has had to withhold as a result of needing some track. He also has the NYC, which is the highest revenue company in the game, and probably will continue to be so. So that's his saving grace, but the PRR is going to be too much of a deficit for him to win, I think. Manito, he is trailing Commodore closely. The NYC revenue is great, and he has the second most shares in the B&O, second best company, so he may still be in contention. He is one share away from his cert limit, but his problem is that he started the C&O, and that's going to be pretty poor revenue for the foreseeable future. And then Commodore running the B&O, he's not going to be able to pick up that 6 share. I think John Flagg will snag that, but he has max investment in the B&O and the GT, two companies with very solid revenue, very solid stock prices. His negative is that he was forced to pick up these PRR shares, and we'll see if that ends up being enough to drag him back into contention with the other players. John Flagg should be buying B&O here. It does. Mad Fedor, share locked. Probably no options for him. Manito, he's going to pick up a share. Do you want the PRR or the C&O here? Probably the PRR. It's going to have a new east-west run. Should be running pretty well. And that'll be floating up as a result. Commodore probably just sitting on shares. And John Flagg forced to buy the C&O. This presidency is not secure, but I don't imagine John Flagg wants to sell any shares in order to take this over. So we should just be passing into the operating round. And there's $3,800. I think there's a very high likelihood this is the last operating round of the game. GT, he has completed a link up into St. Louis. Does this give him 2 east-west runs? It probably does not. Actually, it may. So he can run out of Windsor and Sarnia. I don't know if he has the length of trains to do that. He may not. But regardless, should have good revenue. So it looks like he does have the trains and is running for $630, $40 more than he did. Good news for him. Good news for Commodore, who's already in the lead as well. Commodore, 2 trains for him, and the fact that he now is able to get into St. Louis, I don't know if that changes anything. I think he had that access before. So let's see how he optimizes his track here, and this is going to allow him to run his east-west run from Buffalo without going through Cincinnati, it looks like. So has secured himself an east-west and is running for 690, better revenue. Probably still trailing the NYC though. NYC, he is running for 760. What was the B&O running for? I don't remember. Yeah. So NYC is going to be the revenue leader. But I think that will probably only become relevant if the B&O stops double jumping where the NYC gets an extra double jump or so. We'll see if that comes to pass. PRR had to withhold for this upgrade on C13 and gets it. But unfortunately, I guess there wasn't a gentle, sharp turn available. Otherwise, I'm confused how he doesn't get into Detroit here. So I guess he needed this token or this track here, and it's just not available. So it's going to be delayed a operation in terms of getting his east-west run. That's unfortunate. Running for 390 and pays that. C&O, last company in the operating round, upgrading Terre Haute, and running for 320, which it pays. Looking at the bank, only $1,200 less, so this will be the last round in the game. Commodore was running behind Manito, who is the NYC player, and the difference is roughly 150, 160 bucks. Commodore is ahead by around 300, so unless there's a significant change in the revenue or the B&O is unable to double jump and the NYC does, looks like Commodore will be taking this, but it is relatively close. GT, no more double jumps for him, it doesn't look like. And is able to run for 630, same as before. So just a single move. B&O, he still looks like he can double jump. So that's good news for him. And he's running for 760, big increase in his revenue. Not sure what the change was there. NYC, he upgrades Indy and is running for 800. So all the companies have managed to increase their revenue a little bit. Not entirely sure what the difference maker here was, just maybe the cumulative effect of a bunch of cities being upgraded over the last OR. PRR, going to be getting into Detroit. Actually, does this not upgrade? It does. So he's going to be forced to run into Port Huron instead of straight into Detroit. I guess with a 4-6, you're going to be ignoring some stops, so it doesn't matter that much. And running for 400, able to increase his revenue just a little bit. C&O, last run, upgrading Dayton for an extra 10 bucks and pays that out. So Commodore takes it. He wins by $104, very close game, but his $40 IC company strategy pays out or pays off. So well played to him. I liked watching that strategy unfold, and I'd be very grateful if any good 46 players want to leave some thoughts below the video in the comments, just to say how my analysis was off base or if there's anything I missed. Love to learn about these niche strategies. Well played to everyone. Enjoyed commentating the game, and Track Talk will be back in the future with additional games.